again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. We've got a great topic for you today, and something else, so let's do it. What's the creepiest thing that has ever happened to you? Please remember to like, share, wish this old man a happy birthday, and subscribe. I went for a beer run once in Key West, Florida. I don't know if this is creepy, but we were all creeped out and paranoid AF. We leave our boat to go find beer. Nothing near us. Maps say there's a store near us that sells it. We got there and there's a sketchy rundown crack house type building with bars over the doors. So we knock. Cuban guy cracks the door open just a smidge. He doesn't even ask what we want, just kinda grunted. We asked, "Do you have beer?" He says no and quickly shuts the door. It was a bust. However, we could clearly tell some type of drug operation was happening in there. It was empty except for some kind of equipment on a long desk. We eventually travel a few miles on foot to get beer. Success. We're walking back and are almost at the same location again when a red car passes us. Suddenly they stop and do a super fast U-turn behind us. My heart stopped literally. The car pulls sideways off the road directly in front of us. My body is now almost frozen with anticipation. I was ready to crack a beer over somebody's head as hard as I could. Two Cuban guys get out. They effing got out of the car. Not 20 feet in front of us. Then they yell to some dude in a storage facility that opens a gate for them and they drive in. And that's that. Super anticlimactic, and we thought some drug dudes came to rob us. I live alone. Like any normal adult, I occasionally leave a few folded up things at the end of my bed. I sleep on the left side of the bed, and the clothes, a folded pair of jeans and a folded shirt, the shirt being on top of the pants, were towards the end of the right side of the bed. I was reading a book in bed, and when I was done for the night, I tossed the book towards the right side of the bed. I turned off my lamp and slept. I'm not a sleepwalker, and I didn't wake till morning. When I woke up, I found my book neatly in between the shirt and jeans. Like someone lifted the shirt, placed the book on the jeans, then put the shirt back on top. I have zero clue how that happened. My oldest memory was I was in a hospital room going into the bathroom, watching the window, standing up and sitting down like a normal routine. But the strange part was that I saw myself doing those things like I was watching myself through a CCTV in the corner of the room. Odd memory. Time passes, and there I was on Twitch TV watching Varglethor. He was playing Signal Simulator. The game was very slow-paced, and he had to talk to its viewers. I was having fun until he said that he had an experience, a memory of himself, that he was in a hospital, and he could see himself exactly the same way that I described. That gave me the chills, and from that day on I was sure that my memory could have been real. Once when I was 14, I was in a little village in the Alps. I live in Italy. When I decided to go for a walk in the woods, looking for some mushrooms, at some point I noticed something was wrong. All the birds just stopped singing, and this means that there may be a predator nearby. I obviously felt uncomfortable and walked to the nearest path, jumped the stone wall that was on the edge of it, and I heard somebody screaming. I turned back and I saw a man running in my way, naked and completely covered in mud. From that moment until when I got safe, the only sound I remember I heard is the beating of my heart. I started running up the path and didn't stop until I got into my grandma's house. When I told her what just happened, she didn't believe me, and neither did my mother. But my bro did, because he was with me the day before, when we went in the same place and found some naked footprints in the mud near the stream. I got back with the other people looking for that psycho, but we didn't find anything that could prove what happened. To this day, I still feel uncomfortable to go in the woods, alone. Naked guys covered in mud running around in parks. Italy sounds more like New York. 1. I was around 4, and we were fixing to move out of the house my parents lived in when I was born. I kept having terrible nightmares about this new house before we finally moved in. I had never actually been in the new house before, but my dream version was shockingly close, though in the dream, it was a warped version, almost like the Winchester Mansion. Impossible stairs, rooms that shouldn't physically fit, narrow doorways, windowless rooms, etc. Well, we move in, and I don't have any paranormal experiences, save for a few minor things easily explained away. But fast forward a couple years, so I was 6 or 7. I watched our family dog get hit by a car from our front yard. I still suffer from PTSD symptoms over 2 decades later. I still have nightmares occasionally like everyone else, but not about coming events. Was it premonition? More than likely it was just a kid nervous about moving for the first time, and I had the layout explained to me in words so my mind just filled in the blanks. We lived there a few years, so it's just a coincidence that I had a traumatic experience while living there. The rest all happened at a different house. Next one, after the horror house, as I call it, I had multiple physical awake experiences. I was between 9 and 14 during these events. I should also mention that was in a new development on what used to be farmland. I actually got to walk through the house when it was just a concrete slab with stud framing. 2. As a common experience that others here share, I had frequent times when I felt someone sit down on the foot or side of my bed. I chalked this up to mild haptic jerks as I was on the edge of falling asleep. 3. I was home alone watching TV in the living room. We had a cable box and used that remote. We kept the actual TV remote on top of the entertainment center, like 5 or 6 feet tall. We only ever moved that remote to dust, which was my job, so I know how it was placed. Far enough from the edge, but reachable if needed. Anyway, as I watched TV, it fell off. Not just fell off, it landed in the middle of the room, around 5 or 6 feet away from bouncing another 6 inches or so across the carpet. I tried for a while to make it go that far again. Even if the remote was on the very edge and I gave it a relatively hard push, it would only fall like 2 feet away before bouncing. I still suspect it walked itself off in the vibrations of the TV speakers and some precise levering, a glancing ricochet without making too much noise, and help from the rubber buttons, but I could never make it do it again, and it never fell after that. 4. This one is the spookiest, and my explanation is kind of meh. It was at night after my parents went to bed. I was out of school for some reason, weekend, summer break, I don't remember, so I was camping in the living room that night. I was still awake watching TV. During a commercial, I get up to grab something out of my room. I open the door but pause. I don't know why, but it felt like when you open a door and there's unexpectedly a person standing directly there, and it kind of startles you for a second. As I peer into the pitch dark room, after that split second, I still sense a figure standing adult height inside. I stare, and slowly, as if I'm turning its head to look at me, I see one. Then 2 dim cream-lit eyes look back and lock their gaze on me. I pull my door shut and bolt back to the living room, watching my door for a few solid minutes. I build up the courage, say F it, and go back to my room to investigate, turning on every light on the way. In one quick motion, I throw open the door and flip the overhead light on. Nothing. The window was still latched from the inside, and I checked the closet under the bed and anywhere else even a small child could hide. Still just me and my things. I tried to adjust the lights, where I was standing, the angle of the door, head position, anything I could think of that would cause an arbitrary glare or reflection and mimic what I experienced. My window was at the back of the house, with nothing but a small backyard, a ditch, a line of trees, and then acres of farmland beyond. Plus, I had blinds and curtains, so it couldn't have been a car or something passing. Couldn't even get one eye to appear. Also, remember, this was my room that I had for years, so I would be used to walking in and out of it. I swear, even though I couldn't see it, beyond just the eyes, I could sense the figure's shape. It felt like the shape of a Renaissance demon, almost exactly like this or this. I've never seen those paintings before. I found them trying to give y'all some reference. Except its eyes were more human, and no horns or wings, and it was kind of hunched over, holding its arms and hands similar to a praying mantis, super effed up. And my only explanation was my pubescent brain hallucinating, but I've never experienced anything even remotely close before or since. I was wide awake. I'd been watching cartoons and totally nonchalant, so it wasn't like I was mentally primed to being spooked, nor was it like a shadow person out of the corner of my eye. I was staring at it for a literal solid 10 seconds. I encourage you to go look at a clock and see for yourself how long that is to stare at something, as it seemingly froze in response to me opening the door and slowly turning its head. I still get goosebumps when I think about that night. I was once left alone in a hospital waiting room. I was a foster child, so my caseworker stepped out for a few minutes. This homeless man was right across the room from me. He played with himself as he stared right at me. I was 9-ish, I don't know, but the terror I was in was so effed. I didn't tell anyone because the foster home I was in taught me no one will believe or care about what I have to say. And to this day, that hobo got away with it. That's just absolutely awful. Terribly sorry that that happened to you, and hopefully you can work through that trauma sometime in life. Even though this is something my mom told me when I was a kid, it still freaks me out to this day because it's one of the uncommon monster stories you would usually hear. My mom works at a Japanese corporation here in the Philippines, a place that's already known for lots of monster stories. The office she works in isn't necessarily tall, but big in terms of land area and width. And the one story my mom told me was when she was talking to her coworker about office type shit. After she was done talking to her coworker, the coworker left and went upstairs. But as my mom walked to the corner, she saw the coworker again. The real one this time, not the copycat. I think I was being followed by an older guy when I was 18 or so, walking back home from the movies. It was late, but I live in a smallish town, so didn't mind the walk. There was a huge distance between us, but he kept increasing his pace almost to a mild jog by the time he was closing in on me. I saw a house with pretty much all the lights on, with a door in the back that looked like it was used as the main door. I went around to back to pretend like I was there at the house and hid away a few minutes. When I came back out to look, there was no sign of the guy anywhere, just like he vanished. He was pretty tall, I would say maybe 6'3" or 6'4", and bald. Just creeped me out a lot. I think about it a lot. Okay, when I was around 14, I was at a shopping center, and me and my best friend were getting gumballs out of the gumball machine. All of a sudden, a woman, worker, walks up to us and warns us that there's a man behind us with his camera out and aiming it at us. I was wearing a pretty tight jeans, and my friend was wearing leggings. We turn around to see some random old man holding his phone camera up at us. We immediately run off and run into the shop we deemed safe, as the owners are family friends of my best friend's mom. We leave about 20 minutes later when the whole shopping center was closing. We get out, and then the old man is seen again and starts following us. We run into a local charity shop until he leaves. Scary as a 14-year-old. Probably would have handled it differently if it happened now. Me and my brother walking up to the third and last floor apartment in a private house. Being as it's one apartment per floor, nobody would be coming up behind us, nor did we hear anyone coming up behind us. It's 3 a.m. We open the door, walk into the apartment, and as I lock the door, you hear 3 knocks on the other side. I look at him confused and asked if he heard that. He said he didn't. I asked him to come check the room to make sure the roommate was there. Then the 3 knocks are louder to where he hears it, and we look through the peephole, no one is there. And the roommate was already asleep in his room. Safe to say, we left the door locked, and I don't even live there. I stay 10 minutes away, but that day, not to open the door, I stood on the couch. Still can't figure out, since there was no one brought up coming by knocking on our door at 3 a.m. and being left outside. Still creeps me out. Dear reader, this is going to be a long story. I'll be the judge of that. So I was 11 at the time, and me and my mother were discussing something in the car. I think it was school homework. Then I saw these 2 men talking on the side of the road. I thought nothing about it, and we kept driving. When we got home, usual stuff happened. The next day it was Saturday. My mom wanted to go to Tesco and get some snacks for school. I've packed lunches, so my mom let me stay in the car as she went in. I was playing a game when I heard a shout. It was the same 2 men arguing. They shouted louder and louder. It was like nobody was around other than me and the men. Keep in mind it was 8 a.m. Then the fighting began. They started punching, slapping, you name it. Then one of the men pulled out a knife and stabbed the other. I was still watching silently. Then the man looked over at me, stared right through me, and walked off. What happened next was my mom came back. I was going to tell her about what happened, but she already drove off. When we got home, there were a bunch of notifications on my mom's phone. It was on the neighborhood WhatsApp group. They were all panicked about a bleeding man on the side of a Tesco shop. My mom asked me if I saw anything, so I told her. 5 minutes later, the police were called and came over. I told them all of it, including the details of the man. They said they would search for this man. 2 days later, they came back to us and said they haven't found him yet. We decided that we would need to be safe than sorry, so we started locking everything after that. The worst part is, at 11 p.m. I was still awake, too scared to sleep. Then I looked out of the window, and who did I see? The same guy, staring straight at me. I waved in sarcasm to ignore the fear, closed the curtains, and immediately ran into my mom's room and told her to call the police. She did after I explained the man was there. However, when the police arrived, he was gone. I was effing terrified at this point, and so was my mom. We still lock everything up now because of that incident. When I was 12, I and a friend were messing around smoking a pack of cigarettes at a local park or skate park, both spinning on the swing set, twisting the chain like you do. It was late as hell, 3 I think in the morning, but we were having a good chill together. He skids to a halt on the swing by using his feet, kicking stones up, and asks me for the last puffs of the smoke I have. Passing it to him, I notice he's looking away, over toward the half pipe across the way. "The F is he?" asks, all nonchalant, calm as a cucumber. He snatches the cigarette without looking, and I follow his curiosity to see a dude standing behind the half pipe. I didn't think much of it at first because, it's just a guy at the end of the day, but then I notice he's a good 10 feet tall, and he's way, way too skinny, like unhealthily and disproportionately skinny. And even though it's dark, what I can see of his skin, it looks like raw chicken flesh. "Oi, what are you looking at?" my friend yells, like a rude asshole, causing me to almost jump out of my skin. The next thing I know, I'm sure there were a good 6 more guys just kinda close by, just as tall and weirdly textured. I say, "I'm sure, because I'm much older now, and I don't remember much else of that night other than resting on the trampoline in my buddy's backyard when we got back to his." It sounds stupid, I know, but it is what it is. Something that still freaks me out from time to time. One time when I was a kid around 3 to 6 years old, I used to live in a very small old bungalow with my mom and grandma. When it was the middle of the night, I woke up and saw 3 figures beside my bed through the doorway. They appeared to be wearing lion costumes, and one of them was standing on a blue stool. One of them walked up to my bedside and began jumping. I couldn't tell whether it was a dream or not, but I couldn't move. But I could only turn my head and blink. Eventually I fell asleep again, and I woke up with the same stool in the doorway. I was out hiking way out in the middle of nowhere when I came across a meth site deep in the woods. At first I was like, "So this is a meth site, huh?" Then I heard a truck engine revving through the woods, and then shit got real. I was like, "F," and was about to run, but realized that whoever was coming would be able to hear the rustling of the leaves and limbs from my movement. This was also out in the middle of nowhere, so you would be able to hear my rustling noise from a good distance away. So I just dipped behind a small hill and into some bushes and stayed as quiet as possible. I never even tried to look at whoever it was, but it sounded like only one guy. I had a loaded rifle with an extra magazine, but it was a bolt-action .22, so I was like, F. Then, when I heard his footsteps start getting closer, I was like, well, this is happening. As I took the safety off, luckily he turned away and then left after about 15 minutes. I wonder if that may be as scary as coming across like a bear's den, especially if both of them are occupied. Crazy. Glad you're alright. Despite me being a minor, I significantly get more sexual harassment than my friends. Thing is, I'm not even conventionally attractive in any way. None of my facial features or my body follow the beauty standards where I live. All of my friends followed those beauty standards better, and yet they rarely or had never gotten harassed by a grown-ass man before. There was this one time where I was in a convenience store called Lorient's, and I was chilling with my Diet Coke watching a couple YouTube videos until I slightly hear a voice behind me by the left, but thought it was something else, until the guy walked to my right and raised his voice a little higher and tapped my shoulder. I looked to my right to see an overweight man with dark circles around his eyes, an unkempt growing beard with small round glasses and no neck too. He looked like an Asian Reddit or Discord mod. He asked me confidently if he can add me on WeChat, the equivalent of asking for someone's snap or number here in some parts of Asia. I said no. He asked why, and asked if it was because he was unattractive, and explained how he was a nice guy. I continued to tell him it wasn't because he wasn't attractive, it was because he's a grown-ass man, and the fact that I'm under 18. He continued to accuse me of lying, and saying that I'm 17, which would still be underaged anyway. The guy looked to be around his 30s, and explained again that he's a nice guy. I said no again, and told him that he can keep being in denial and to stop harassing me. He got slightly mad and said that he knew what he was saying and started bragging about his intelligence and how he graduated at Harvard. I told him that if he doesn't leave me alone, I'll call the cops and tell the employees to kick him out. He finally left. After spending around 35 more minutes in there, and when I left to go home, I got pretty lucky that the guy didn't set up a sting operation to do something to me after I'd left the bright convenience store.